Hello and welcome to this developer skill sprint on regular expressions and TRegEx. My name is Mannarino and I'm one of the Embarcadero software consultants. This skill sprint will cover using regular expressions with the TRegEx record for handling regular expressions. Now the purpose of these developer skill sprints are to give you about a 20-minute session that focuses on a new skill that you can use immediately and get answers to your questions in a live questions and answers session at the end of this skill sprint. And this blog notes link you see on the bottom of the slide gives you the replay of the session, including links for sample projects that I use in this skill sprint. This skill sprint on regular expressions with the TRegEx works with Rad Studio 10 Seattle and the App Method Summer 2015 release supported platforms using both Object Pascal and C++ in both VCL and FireMonkey apps. Now this skill sprint is going to use Object Pascal examples, and in 2 days on Thursday, December 10th, I'll present the C++ developer skill sprint on this same topic, but use C++ examples. So with FireMonkey Multi-Device Apps, you can use the TRegEx record on Windows, Mac OS X, Android, and iOS, or you can use the TRegEx with VCL apps and deploy to Windows 32 and Windows 64. For this skill sprint, I'll quickly define what are regular expressions and what can you do with them. We'll look at the TRegEx record for handling regular expressions, and we'll see that TRegEx calls the Perl RegEx functions that interface with the open source Perl compatible regular expressions library. And if we look at the website for PCRE, we see that the PCRE library is a set of functions that implement regular expression pattern matching using the same syntax and semantics as Perl 5. So what are regular expressions? Well, regular expressions are an extremely powerful tool for manipulating text and data. They are now standard features in a wide range of languages and popular tools, including Object Pascal with Delphi and C++ with C++ Builder. So basically, a regular expression is a pattern describing a certain amount of text. Regular expressions are search strings where certain characters, symbols, have a special meaning. So with regular expressions, you can do text processing, and with the general pattern notation, almost like a mini programming language, allows you to describe and parse text. So for example, this slide shows a few regular expression patterns. This first pattern describes a series of letters, digits, dots, underscores, percent signs, and hyphens, followed by an @ sign, followed by another series of letters, digits, hyphens, and finally followed by a single dot with 2 or more letters. So this pattern describes an email address, and you can use this regular expression to validate user input for a valid email address, assuming that this is what defines a valid email address. For this second RegEx example, can anybody guess what it is and what can it be used for? Well, it could be used to validate if an integer was correctly inputted by the user. And the last example comes from the Rad Studio Refine utility if you used it for migrating BDE, DB Express, or any DAC applications to FireDAC. The Refine utility uses the Perl compatible regular expressions for search and replacement patterns to migrate BDE, DB Express, or any DAC apps to FireDAC. So we don't have the time in the short skill sprint to cover how to create regular expressions, but there are many books and free internet tutorials on how to create regular expressions, like these regular expression books we see on this slide. Let's now look at what is TRegEx and how do you use it with regular expressions. Well, TRegEx, as we see here, is a record for handling regular expressions. So using regular expressions with Rad Studio and this TRegEx record, you can add, remove, isolate, validate, and manipulate all kinds of text and data. And TRegEx is in the System.RegularExpressions unit. So Delphi has had built-in support for regular expressions since Delphi XE. So in most cases, you're going to use this regular expressions unit. And this unit defines a set of records that mimic the regular expression classes. So they allow you to use a regular expression in just one line of code without explicit memory management. So that's cool. So now let's go into Delphi and look at how to use regular expressions unit with regular expressions. So here I'm using Delphi 10 Seattle subscription update 1. Now TRegEx, it works for VCL, FireMonkey, and console apps. So this example is a Delphi VCL Forms app that I quickly coded to show how to use the TRegEx, IsMatch, and Replace methods. So to use the TRegEx, we add the System Regular Expressions unit to our users. Now for any new code written in Delphi, it's best to use this regular expressions unit that is part of Delphi rather than one of the many third-party units that may be available. Looking at the regular expressions unit, we see that the unit defines TRegEx as a record rather than a class. In addition to TRegEx, the regular expressions unit also defines TMatch and TMatchCollection, TGroup, and TGroupCollection as records rather than classes. So TRegEx as a record rather than a class means you don't need to call create and free to allocate and deallocate memory. So that's cool. But we do see that TRegEx does have a create constructor that you can call if you want to use the same regular expression more than once. So that way TRegEx doesn't compile the same regex twice. So if you call the constructor, you can then call any of the non-static methods that do not take the regular expression as a parameter. So if you don't call the constructor, you can only call the static class methods that take the regular expression as a parameter. So all TRegEx methods have static and non-static overloads. So which ones you use just depends on whether you want to make more than one call to TRegEx using the same regular expression. Next, let's look at the TRegEx methods. Let me switch to my code-only view. The first static overloaded method we have here is IsMatch. So we see here that the IsMatch method takes in an input string and it will compare it to a regex pattern, and if it matches, it will return true, indicating the regular expression matches the string. So for example, we could use this method IsMatch to validate user input. So if we want to validate if the user entered a correct date in a correct format, we could create a regular expression to match a specific date format. So if the input date matches the regex, then the method returns true. Let's see how we can use this IsMatch method in the Delphi VCL app that I already have opened. So a popular use of regular expressions is to validate the user's input. So for example, did the user enter a valid date or a valid email address or a valid IP address? So programmers would need to write their own error checking functions for user input validation, since there is no uniform syntax for checking the correctness of the user input. But now using Rad Studio and regular expressions and this TRegEx record, now it's possible to check in a very simple and effective way if the input is what you expected from the user. So this app will check if the user entered a valid date in month, day, year format between these two dates. So we have an edit box for the user's input, and then when we click on our validate date button, we have our regex pattern for a valid date in month, day, year format between these two dates. So now we can call the IsMatch method of TRegEx, and we can compare our input date with the regex pattern. And the IsMatch method will return true or false, indicating whether the regular expression matches the string. So let's run this app and see what it does. Run the app. So we'll enter a valid date in month, day, year format between these two dates. So now we're entering December 8th, 2015. Click the validate date button. It calls the IsMatch method of TRegEx, and it returns that yes, this date does match the regular expression, so that's fine. If I change the month from 12 to 13, that should be invalid. Validate the date. It comes back and says yes, the date does not match the regular expression, so that all works fine. If I change the date back to the month 12, but let's say I change the year to 3015, validate the date, compares it against the RegEx pattern, and it once again comes back with date does not match the regular expression. So that all works great. Let's now go back into our regular expressions unit and look at some of the other methods for TRegEx. So looking at the static overload match method, we see it also takes an input string and compares it to a RegEx pattern, but it returns a TMatch record with the details of the first match. So if the match fails, it returns a TMatch record with the success property set to nil. The non-static overload of match takes an optional starting position and an optional length parameter that you can use to search through only part of the input string. The matches method takes an input string, compares it to a RegEx pattern, and it returns a TMatch collection. The default item array property of this record holds a TMatch for each match the regular expression found in the string. If there are no matches, the count property of the returned TMatch collection record is 0. The next method we'll look at is replace, and we'll see how we can use this replace method in that same Delphi VCL app we've already been using. We use this replace method to search and replace all matches in a string. So we see it accepts an input string, and then we create a RegEx pattern looking for that text in the string, and then once it finds it, we can replace it with another string. Or instead of passing the replacement text as a string, you can pass a TMatch evaluator, which is nothing more than a method that takes one parameter called match of type TMatch, and that returns a string. Let's now see how to use the TRegEx replace method to search and replace text. So for this example, we want to take an input string of numbers and words, and then we want to split the input string into numbers and words. So we want to remove all of the words and only display the numbers, and then we want to remove all of the numbers and only display the words. So to do this, we're using two regular expressions. So one regular expression should be able to match any real number, and another regular expression knows how to match any word. And the replacement string we're going to use is just a simple empty string. So what we want to do now for this input string is be able to split the input string into numbers and words. And we're going to do this by using the replace method of TRegEx. So for clean numbers, what we want to do is take our input string, and we want to match it with our RegEx pattern for numbers. So any numbers that it finds, it wants to replace those numbers with our replacement string, which in this case is just an empty string. So that's going to clean out all the numbers from the string and just leave us with words. And we're going to do the same thing for clean words. So we're going to take the same input string, we're going to compare it with the RegEx pattern looking for words, and any words it finds, we're going to replace those words with our replacement string, which is just an empty string. So we're going to clean out all the numbers and just have a string of words, and then we'll clean out all the words and just have a string of numbers, and then we'll display those clean words, and then we'll display those clean numbers. So let's run the app and see what it does. Run the app. So here's our input string. It has both words and numbers in it, and when we click on the split the input string into numbers and words button, it calls the replace method of TRegEx, And we see that it takes the input string and it removes all the words and it replaces it with the empty string replacement string. And it does the same for removing the numbers and only keeping the words, and we see only the words get displayed. So that replace method of TRegEx works just fine. So let's go back into the regular expressions unit and look at the last method. So the last method we're going to look at is split. So this split method is used to split a string along its regex matches. So the result is returned as a dynamic array of strings. So that was a quick overview of the TRegEx methods. Now there's 3 more items I wish to mention about this regular expressions unit. Internally, the regular expressions unit, it uses the regular expressions core unit. So if we look at regular expressions core, we see that it defines the tPerl.RegEx class. And tPerl.RegEx is a wrapper around the open source PCRE library. So both the regular expressions unit and the regular expressions core unit use the PCRE RegEx flavor. Let's look at a few more RegEx apps using TRegEx. So this is a regular expressions VCL app that ships with Rad Studio 10, and it allows the user to test the validity of a string with regard to a regular expression. So this app is also going to use the IsMatch method of TRegEx. Let me run the app and explain what it does. The form contains a list box, a memo box, an edit box for user input, and a button to evaluate if the user input matches the regular expression. So from the list box, the user can choose to validate an email address, an IP address, or a date in one of 2 different formats. When one of the options is selected from the list box, the regular expression that is used for validation gets displayed in the memo component. So next, the user can enter a input string into the tEdit box and click the evaluate button to see whether the input is valid according to the regular expression. So let's try it with a few samples. So let's first test email first. Let me enter my email, al.mannarino@embarcadero.com. So that's my input string. It's going to validate it against this regular expression. Click on evaluate. It calls the IsMatch method of TRegEx, and it comes back with that yes, this text does match the regular expression, so that works fine. If I remove my al dot and just make it a Mannarino at embarcadero.com and test it, it still comes back fine. So the text does match the regular expression. If I leave off the .com at the end and try to evaluate, it comes back with the text does not match the regular expression. So that appears to be working fine. Next, let me try an IP address. So there's the RegEx for a valid IP address. So let me enter in an IP address here, 192.168.1.5. Click evaluate. It comes back with that's a valid IP address, so that's fine. Let's see, let me change the last value to 355 and go to evaluate, and this time it comes back with this text does not match the regular expression, so that also appears to be working fine. And let me just do one more with a date format. So this time we'll do date in day, month, year format. So 31 for the day, 12 for the month, this year 2015, evaluate. That comes back fine. But if I pick 13 as the month and go to evaluate, that comes back with this text does not match the regular expression using that regEx we see in the memo box. So all this appears to be working fine. Let's look at one more last regEx FireMonkey example. So I mentioned earlier that TRegEx works the same on console, VCL, and FireMonkey multi-device apps. So here's an example using FireMonkey. So this app is similar to the VCL app we just saw, but since this is a FireMonkey application, we can add special shadow effects to the input edit box to show if the edit box input value is valid or not. So we can make the shadow effect green for valid or make it red for invalid. So for the T-edit, we added a shadow effect component, and we set its shadow color property to be red by default. For a FireMonkey app, the T-edit component, it has an event called onChange_Tracking. With this event in real time, as we're entering our input, we can continuously validate the input against our RegEx and change the shadow effect from red to green once we get valid input. So that's cool. So for example, when you input an invalid email address on either Windows, Mac, iOS, and/or Android, you'll get a red glow effect in real time until you have valid input. Then the valid email address glows green. So that's really cool. Let's quickly see this running on multiple devices. So since this is a FireMonkey Multi-Device App, we can build and deploy it to Windows, Mac OS X, Android, and iOS. Let me first run it on Windows. So here's the app running on Windows, and we'll pick email address. So let me enter an email address. So here's my email address, but I'm missing the @ between my name and Embarcadero, and we see that the T-edit box is still glowing red because it's an invalid email address. But if I go into it and I add my @, real-time validation now tells me it's a valid email address. So that's really cool. And we could do the same thing for the IP address and the 2 different date formats. So that works great. Okay, and for another device, let me quickly just pick my Mac OS X desktop, build and deploy it over to my Mac OS X desktop. So here it is running on my Mac OS X desktop, and we can do the same thing. Let me pick email address, enter in my email address. Once again, the edit is still glowing red because it's an invalid email address. But if I enter my @ between name and Embarcadero, the edit box changes from the red to green, telling me it's a valid address. So this works great, and it works the same way on iOS and Android also. This ends what I had time to cover on this skill sprint on using regular expressions with TRegEx. For additional resources on using regular expressions with TRegEx, look at these DocWiki links on TRegEx and Perl RegEx. This Delphi regular expressions classes link has additional details on the regular expressions unit and the TRegEx record. This Perl compatible regular expressions link has the documentation on PCRE, and for Perl 5 regular expression syntax, read the Perl regular expressions main page, and also look at the 2 RegEx samples, both VCL and FireMonkey, that ship with Rad Studio or download from SourceForge. And lastly, go to the blog notes link, embt.co/sprint-regular-expressions, to get the replay of this session and additional information, including links for other sample projects used in this skill sprint. For the next time, if you use C++ Builder, in 2 days on Thursday, December 10th, I'll be doing the same regular expressions and TRegEx session, but using C++ Builder and C++ examples. For next week's developer skill sprint on Tuesday, the 15th of December, we'll cover understanding and using FireMonkey layouts using Object Pascal, and doing the same on Thursday, the 17th of December, using C++. Now, at these understanding and using FireMonkey layouts skill sprint, Jim McKeat will show us how to maximize the different layouts in FireMonkey for a flexible user interface. So that sounds very interesting, and I'll be attending those sessions myself. And you can see the full skill sprint schedule and replays at embt.co/sprints15. Let me quickly turn this session over to Jim McKeat from Developer Relations to let you know what are the current RAD Studio, Delphi, and C++ Builder special offers for this month of December, and then I'll come back for any questions that you might have.
Give me a moment to tell you briefly about the promotions we have available for anyone that upgrades to Delphi, C++ Builder, or RAD Studio 10 Seattle. Between now and December 31st, registered users of any earlier version can qualify for upgrade pricing. This is a savings of up to 45% off the new user price. Additionally, all registered users of 10 Seattle get access to the bonus pack. The bonus pack includes the new book by Nick Hodges, More Coding in Delphi. This covered writing solid code, aspect-oriented programming, parallel programming, and many more patterns and practices. Also, the new book by Marco Cantu, The Object Pascal Handbook. This is a modern language guide. It covers many new language features as well as the core runtime library. Additionally, you get the MIDA Converter Basic, which does a lot of the heavy lifting to help you convert existing VCL applications to FireMonkey to take advantage of multi-device development. And also the VCL and FireMonkey premium styles. These premium styles give you the styles you need to have your application really stand out and have a professional look and feel. The styles are also available for consistency between VCL and FireMonkey to give you consistent look and feel across platforms. Also, as a special offer between now and December 18th, if you buy or upgrade to Professional, Enterprise, or Ultimate, you can additionally get Konopka Signature VCL controls for free and CodeSite Studio 5 for free. If you upgrade to Architect, though, you get the RAD Studio Solution Pack for free, which includes most every component you need for your application development. All this you receive immediately without any extra steps on your part. For more information about these special offers and more, visit Embarcadero.com/radoffer.
Thank you, Jim, for letting us know all those great special offers for this month of December. So this ends this developer skill sprint on using regular expressions with TRegEx. So you saw how regular expressions are an extremely powerful tool for manipulating text and data, and how easy it is to use TRegEx with regular expressions with RAD Studio. So thank you all for attending. Now let's open up this session for live questions and answers.
Well, the first question is it working in FMX as well? And Al said, absolutely. You can use the regular expressions. They're in the system unit, which means they work across VCL and FireMonkey and across Windows, OS X, iOS, and Android.
So there's another question here about, it says that looking at some of the examples there, they're using a slash character for any, essentially any literals. So the way regular expressions work is you can think of each character as like a programming word, an identifier, and so some of those characters have specific meaning, like the slash and the dot and the plus. If you go to that link right there in the middle, it says the www.regular-expressions.info. There's a ton of good reference information there that you can use to understand regular expressions better. But there's a list that you can find on that site that lists all the characters that have specific identifier meanings. And any of those characters, if you want to use those to match a literal in your string, then you have to use the slash, the / to indicate that you're escaping that character to become a literal. So when you go to the website, the regular-expressions.info, and when you see that list of characters that have special meanings, then you can recognize that what those characters mean, and other characters are used as literals. And like I said, if you want to make a plus from or the dot, so the dot, for example, means match anything. If you want to make the dots instead, I want to match a dot specifically, like in a IP address, for example, and you put a forward slash before it, and then it goes dot from being a special meaning into being specifically a period. And so yeah, that's the purpose of the forward slash in the regular expressions.
And it says can use regular expressions in place of a mask. I don't know how to mask off input because the regular expression takes a string after the fact, right? So.
Right. So you can compare, right? If you have a mask to compare input, that's kind of what regular expressions does. Yeah, maybe a little bit more clarification on what you're trying to do, and then maybe we can give you a better answer, yes or no, if TRegEx can be used in place of a mask.
You could, depending on which event, you could basically put an event on, it would seem, and then have that event check what they just added to the string in there, and if it doesn't match the regular expression, you could say, oh, and prevent them from doing that. There's an event on edit box where you can evaluate the string before it gets added to the edit box, I believe, but I can't recall what it is offhand. But yeah, you should be able to do that. Again, like Al said, it depends exactly on what you're trying to accomplish. But yeah, as far as anytime you want to be able to see if what the user's typed in matches what you're expecting as far as formatting, whether it's numbers or some sort of format like Al showed with the IP addresses or dates or email addresses, then yeah, you can use a regular expression for that.
And Jim, I think you had a question. It does work on Android and iOS with FireMonkey apps or console apps or anything you want to do to validate data coming from a database or whatever. You can apply rules on email addresses, for example, and so on.
Yeah, it's really regular expressions. Like I said, it's almost like a whole new programming language. But then once you kind of understand some of the basics, there's lots of other people out there, because it's based on the PCRE, that you can just take advantage of other people have created regular expressions or change some of the existing regular expressions out there. And yeah, one thing that usually when people start talking about regular expressions, somebody will say, well, can I use regular expressions to validate HTML? And apparently there's a great deal of debate about whether you can do that or not, but the current school of thought is that HTML is too complex to be validated by a regular expression because there's too many nuances of what can be a valid tag and the way tags can be arranged. You'll see people that try to validate HTML with a regular expression, but the current school of thought is that it just doesn't cover every possible permutation. There's still a very powerful way to validate things, and with the TRegEx apparently works across all platforms. So that's great.
Al, do you have to link anything else in, or does the regular expression unit bring in all the code that you need for your executable?
Nope, nothing else that is needed. So that standalone TRegEx class is all you need. Just add the regular expressions unit, and you're good to go.
If I recall correctly, and I think I'll mention this, is that when you first pass the string into it, it actually compiles the string into the regular expression. So there's a little bit of overhead when you first put the string in to convert that string into a regular, from the human readable portion of the regular expression, where the string you type in becomes something behind the scenes that is used to do the pattern matching. And so if you're wanting to use the same pattern over and over and over again, then like Al showed, you want to use the constructor on the TRegEx in order to do that once when you construct the TRegEx record, and then it will do the matching over and over and over again. But because if you have a loop and you're going to go through 100 items, you don't want to recreate that regex each time. So do that first ahead of time because there's a little bit of overhead. Very small amount when it goes to convert that into a regular expression.
That's right. In addition to that question on overhead, I found out if you're doing many of these regex pattern matches, so in situations where performance is really critical, instead of using TRegEx, go directly to the Perl regex and use it directly, once again, if performance is really critical for you.
That's one of the things I've always loved about Delphi is that you have all these different levels of things you can deal with it at, right? It's like, oh, it's easy level here, or you can dive down all the way down to the metal and win those rare cases you need to get squeezed out of performance flexibility out. So Ralph's asking if you can pass a delegate to IsMatch to validate certain parts of the input, like checksum functions and stuff like that, things that wouldn't be supported by regular expressions in general.
It's something I have not tried myself, but worthwhile. I'll take that as a homework assignment to try it out myself, and I'll post it in the blog notes link, my results.
I know you can. I haven't tried it either, but I know you can get a collection of matches back, and then you could go through each match and deal with that match specifically. So I don't think you could do it with a delegate, but you could go through the collection of matches when you're done, I would think. Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to see how that comes out for you. Ralph says he's curious to find out how it comes out too. I know that my experience has been that usually I start trying to deal with text parsing, and I'm using like the string replace function or some other stuff like that, positions, and usually if you find yourself doing that, that's when you need to start looking at TRegEx. If you're doing lots of position of this string and this string and getting complicated, that's a good time to use RegEx to look to see if it matches and to replace parts of strings and stuff like that. So Yusuf's asking kind of a specific question here about regular expression. I'm not sure if I completely understand it. I think it's something to do with regular expression, but I'm not sure if he wants an example. I'm not sure if it's a mask he's using there or what he's trying to accomplish.
So basically, if you can define a RegEx pattern for what you're looking for, then yes, our IsMatch or match method of a TRegEx will work using it. So if that's the question you're asking, then yes, the answer is yes, it can do it.
Yeah, as Al mentioned, there's no way we can cover everything you can do with regular expressions in a skill sprint session. Those 3 books he listed probably still don't cover everything that you can do with regular expressions. And there's a lot of that regular-expressions.info site has a lot of good information on it, and then as well as some of the PCRE expression documents and such.
Yeah, and I put that regular expression classes link. It's in the chat window, so you just click on it. So we'll look regular expressions through this.
Yeah. So yes, we do use the so it's Perl 5. So the regular expressions that TRegEx uses is based on Perl 5's regular expression syntax and semantics. So that's what you want to look at for any type of RegEx expressions you want to use with the TRegEx class or record.
The question was, can you define different patterns in one string, or do you have to have separate strings for different patterns?
You can have multiple patterns in the same string.
That's correct. So, there were many. I only got to so of the methods. I pretty much only showed the static overloaded method, but you'll see there are many other non-static methods to use. It's quite possible one of those can do what you're asking for.
So Ralph says your homework is to create a pattern that also covers February the 30th and leap years, of course.
Sweet. I'm sure someone has already come up with this RegEx pattern, so I will do that, and I'll post it to the blog's notes link.
Yeah, there are tons and tons of examples of regular expressions out there. It's very rare. Whenever I need a regular expressions, I usually Google it, say, who's got a regular expression for finding this? And someone's already found the pattern to deal with those common scenarios like that. So,
if you recall one of my early opening slides, I had that short version of what a RegEx to check for a valid email address, so very short RegEx expression. But then when you looked at the examples that I showed, it was something 10 times as more complicated because email address has become much more complicated, right? You want to check for uppercase, lowercase characters. Sometimes you can only have email addresses without any dots at the end. So it really comes down to if the RegEx you're creating is truly what you want it to do and it's exactly the email address you're looking for or the IP address or the date time format, then yes, it's going to do what it does. But if there's some other exception to it, then you need to modify that regex to have it check for exactly what you're looking for.
I was going to say that if you're using regular expressions, that you really want to consider also doing unit tests on that so that you can validate that the regular expression is doing what you expect it to do, because it's kind of a complicated expression language, and it's not always intuitively obvious to the reader what exactly is going on. But if you do some unit tests on that, some tests on that regular expression, that you can go and look and say, okay, yep, it's behaving the way I expect it to behave, then you know that your regular expression is working correct. So yeah, definitely, if you're using regular expressions, have a good suite of unit tests for it.
That's right, and there are some good free RegEx expression editors that let you test the RegEx just to make sure they're valid. So that's something to look at. So just check the internet for some RegEx, they call them RegEx editors, where you can put in your regular expression and it'll validate for you to tell you if it's valid or not. And then you can give it some sample input and check if it's working correctly for you.
Yep. That regular-expressions.info site has a regex buddy you can get off there, which I've used before in the past, and if I recall correctly, it's written in Delphi. It's probably one of the better ones out there, in my opinion.
Yes, I agree.
And not just because it's written in Delphi. Here's a question here. If there's a regular expression for validating IP addresses, I think that was one of the examples you showed was validating IP addresses with regular expressions, right?
That's correct. So that's a very good question. So yes, so that IP address I use in the example, I believe it's supposed to check for any valid IP address. So now with these regular expressions, it really comes down to, that regular expression you create, does it do exactly what you want it to do? Because there may be some exception out there, let's say for an IP address or an email address, that the regular expression is not going to match. So if you recall that one of those first opening slides where I showed that quick example of an email address, it was a very short string showing an email address. And then if you looked at the actual example I showed, it was like a regular expression about 5 times the length that checked for more possibilities. So that's always a concern or a consideration when you're using these regular expressions. So whatever you create, does it really actually match what you want it to do? But these regular expressions have been around for a long time, so most likely whatever type of regex pattern you're looking for, it's quite possible that someone has already created and you can go find it and reuse it.
Yeah, that's the great thing about regular expressions is, like you said, there's tons of examples already out there. And I would suggest, you should always have a unit test to make sure your code's behaving correctly, but with unit tests especially, you want to have a number of tests that make sure that it is validating exactly the way you'd be expected to, because it at least to me, maybe some people are really good at reading regular expressions and knowing what to do, but they're not always intuitively obvious what's going to go on there for that regular expression. So lots of tests are a good idea.
And in addition to those tests, there are several free regex editors where you can test your regular expressions before using them. So you just drop your regular expressions in the editor, it'll validate them for you. You can run some sample tests against it just to make sure it's doing exactly what you want it to do.
So there's a question here if there's a repository of regular expressions out there that one could use that are ready to use. And I just looked here, I found one called RegEx library here that appears to be a library of regular expressions. There's probably other ones out there, but if not, just Google what you're looking for and you probably can find it.
Yes, I would agree. Like I said, these regexes have been around for quite a while. So, like Jim said, an internet search on what you're looking for will probably find you many samples on regex, and there's many tutorials on how to create these regexes yourself.
And Jens is listing. Oh, I'm getting an echo. Okay, Jens is listing regexr.com as one of a way to do testing. It's a testing site where you can put in regular expressions and see what happens.
Excellent. Yeah, there's lots of good resources out there for that. Jens is also asking, it says, believes that the regular expressions were updated in XE6 that PCRE includes. And he was kind of worried that it would break some of the regular expressions, but he didn't find any. And so he's curious if he should be scared of the future or if we shouldn't have to worry about it.
Okay, so so for us in this TReg class, really, there's really three parts, right? So you need to know the regular expressions, and then we have our TRegEx record, and that's using the open source PCRE library. And I recall Delphi XE was the first release of Delphi that had those built-in support for regular expressions. So it still goes back to using the open source PCRE library, and that's what we're matching up against.
Yeah, we tend to make a really big effort to make sure that it's backwards compatible with our updates. So I would say don't fear the future, just keep on coding. Is it possible to use regular expressions to add a mask to a string, for example, inserting dots and dashes on the string in specific positions?
So for that, by a mask, so you can do with that replace method, you could search for, so if you have a regular expression that searches your string looking for dots and dashes, then you can replace it with whatever other string you want to replace it with. So that appears to be what you want to do. So I kind of showed that with that. You have a string of words and numbers or integers, so I want to search that string looking for any integers, replace it with some other string, and search that string for any words, replace it with another string. So as long as you can come up with a regex pattern that finds what you're looking for, then you can replace it with anything else you want. So that appears to be what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly, if you want to replace it. Now, I think he said when to insert, so if he just wants to insert a dot at a certain location, I don't think you could do that with a regular expression. Maybe you could, but probably what he wants to do is instead use a regular expression to validate that the string is in the format he's expecting it to be and does have what he's expecting to see, and then just insert it with the regular string handling in Delphi.
Okay,
I think that's...
Oh, I just wanted to mention that the blog post, I've taken the links from Al's final slide, and those are on the blog post. I've put the link in the chat window and in the Q&A log, so you don't have to key in the links you're seeing on the screen. All those links are in the blog post for today's session. And there's a question here. You do really complex regex. Is there any speed problems? Al?
Unmuted. All right, so great question. So in general, really no overhead. But I've seen if you're worried about any performance overheads, then instead of using the TRegEx record, then you can go directly to the Perl RegEx directly. So I've seen, so for customers or for applications where performance is critical, then for sure use the Perl RegEx directly instead of using TRegEx, and that should eliminate any performance issues.
Yeah, that's one thing that's great about Delphi is you can work at different levels. And also you mentioned that you can use the constructor to parse your pattern ahead of time. And so if you're, like, for example, in a loop, you want to only provide the pattern as a text once because it actually inside compiles it essentially into the regular expression, builds it in memory. So you want to provide the string just once, and then it will compile it internally. But once it's done that, it should be fairly fast. Probably, for the most part, regular expressions probably going to be faster than most of the alternatives out there for most situations I would expect. So yeah, it may be some overhead in a really complex regular expressions, but it's probably better than trying to do it some other way.
Okay, well, that's all the questions. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.
All right, thank you all for coming. So hopefully, like I saw, it's great to use this TRegEx. Very simple to use and very powerful for doing data and string manipulation. And it's, like I said, it's been inside of Delphi since XE. So go ahead and use it. And like I said, the best use I see for it is validating user input. A really nice way to make sure user input is coming in correct, among other great uses of TRegEx and regular expressions. So once again, thank you all for attending, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.